The numbers were ugly, but we weren't in this for one quarter or a year. We're in this for the next 10 and 20 years. What we see is a lot of opportunities just to slap a logo, and we're not interested in doing that. We don't look to create trends, nor do we look to ride or chase trends, because we've got products that resonate across generations.
Welcome to This Is Working, where leaders share their strategies for success and the lessons that shape them. With a background leading billion-dollar businesses at Procter & Gamble, Patrice Louvet brings a unique mix of heritage brand stewardship and forward-thinking innovation to Ralph Lauren. A big part of this has been a shift in marketing strategy in the influencer era, with a strong emphasis on authenticity. Here's the second part of our insightful conversation. One of the things that you've done in your time is expand who Ralph Lauren is for, especially with young people. That has been an area that's been very hard for Ralph Lauren to crack. How do you maintain your authenticity while also reaching new audiences?
The key question I got when I started, broadly, but particularly from investors, was, hey, Patrice, is Ralph Lauren still relevant, right? Has the brand's time just passed? There was reason to ask that question because we were not connecting with the younger generation. They were like, you're my dad's brand, you're my granddad's brand, you're not really my brand. You know, we accepted that reality, right? Rather than ignore it or try to brush it away. Two, we are also really clear that we want to be here 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 30 years from now. We have to recruit that consumer, right? Because the new consumer recruiting is really the lifeblood of the company. Three, and this is going to sound so obvious to you, Dan, so I apologize. Like, you got to understand who they are and you got to go where they are, right? We were very present in print. We were very present in the New York Times. Guess what? That consumer is not really consuming much print, nor are they reading the New York Times. So job one was be where they are. Job two was be where they want to transact, right? So obviously leaning into e-commerce. And then job three is, expand the scope of marketing activations such that you're tapping into their interests and their passions. So for example, we got into gaming, right? So we did a partnership with Fortnite. We're actually going to be launching something in a few months with Roblox. And then we change how we approach our sports platform, as we talked about earlier, leveraging influencers that resonate with that younger consumer. We doubled our marketing spend as a percent of revenue between the time I started 7-8 years ago and where we are today. And I'm hopeful we will continue to increase our marketing spend. That's given us the ability to provide an incredibly broad portfolio of marketing activations. So we can talk to the new generation, but we still need to talk to my generation, and we need to talk to the older generation because we love all our consumers, and we're probably one of the very few multi-generational brands that exist out there. Actually, what we have found is our core product is relevant whatever the generation is. So we can sell a white polo shirt to a newborn. They probably won't buy it, the parents will, or the grandparents. A white polo shirt to a 15-year-old, a white polo shirt to a 25-year-old, man, woman, 40-year-old, etc. Now, what do we do differently? We style it differently. So for a 45-year-old, I might style a white polo shirt with, a blazer like you, a pair of chinos.
Right.
For a 20-year-old, it might be styled with a polar bear sweater and a pair of ripped jeans and a pair of sneakers, right? But it's still the white polo shirt. And I think that's what's so exciting about what we are as a company is we've got products that resonate across generations. And we just need to do a good job, generation after generation, bringing them to life, bringing excitement and driving specific relevancy, but still focused on what we stand for as opposed to try to be something different for another generation, which I think has been the problem for many of our peer companies in our space.
Absolutely. So how do you keep your product teams from chasing trends?
So it starts with the foundation of this company and Ralph's philosophy, which is actually we're not in fashion, right? And Ralph, if he were here, would tell you I really despise trends because trends come and go.
Yeah. I
don't want to be too hot. I don't want to be too cold. So actually, I get a lot of questions on, what about this trend? And this trend is going away and this new trend's coming. And we go, la, 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 right? As much as possible, which is we stay true to who we are. We express it in a way that's fresh and relevant, in the right channels, targeting the right consumer. And we don't look to create trends, nor do we look to ride or chase trends. Now, of course, they're parts of the mix, but they're not core to how we operate.
You've been really effective in using external events, things going on in the world, to help almost elevate the brand. And if I think about Wimbledon or the Olympics, you think Ralph Lauren. So what's the difference between sponsorship and becoming part of an experience?
Yeah, that's a really important lens for us, Dan. We don't want to just slap our logo, right? I mean, there are a lot of conversations around, should you guys get into Formula One? It's about design, it's about performance, and Ralph has one of the best sports car collections in the world, right? But what we see is a lot of opportunities just to slap a logo, and we're not interested in doing that. Yeah. We're not interested in just being a sponsor. We actually want to co-design with the partners. I think if you ask the Wimbledon team, they would say Wimbledon and Ralph Lauren evolved together to this premier experience that's provided to both spectators that are there and fans who are following on TV. Because we do want people to feel like when they come to Wimbledon, the US Open, the Ryder Cup, the Olympics you mentioned, the Australian Open that we signed more recently, we're giving them this unique surround sound Ralph Lauren experience that's consistent with our values, that brings to life our purpose, that helps people dream. And I think our teams around the world have done this pretty effectively.
But how do you do it? This is what I would love to understand, because I think every company would say that's what our goal is. No one wants to just slap their logo there. They want to get the halo effect of being part of this experience. You've done it in a way that I think other brands haven't been able to. Is there any secrets you're willing to divulge about that?
So some of it I want to keep for myself, but authenticity, critical, right? What is this brand doing in this space? I'll take the Olympics, for example. We're about inspiring the dream of a better life. And so the Olympian story is an incredible story of an inspiring dream. That's actually the best connection to the Ralph Lauren purpose. So authenticity is really important. Like consumers don't scratch their heads, or viewers say, well, the association doesn't make sense. Yes, you get eyeballs and you get viewership, but well, what are you doing there? And what does that mean about your brand? And we're being very selective on that. I think the other is the making sure that we are providing an experience, that it is not just a brand visibility moment, but that there is an experience related to that. And that requires all the touch points to be coherent and to support this kind of brand presentation, brand image. You know, we have a lot of hospitality in these events, right? So if you saw our suite at Wimbledon, a lot of people come and say, you guys have by far the best suite. Well, we put a lot of attention in, not, is the food good, but more, does it feel like I just immersed you in a Ralph Lauren world? Right? Does this feel like Ralph's home? As we do that, and obviously there's a high bar for us to do that consistently, then we drive impact, we drive this notion of integrity, and we drive excitement.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people would think about that as a cost. How do I minimize? I'm going to sponsor this, but how do I make sure this box is as cheap as possible? And you're saying every touch point has to feel like Ralph.
Elevated, yeah. And listen, if you're in, you have to be all in.
Yeah.
That's a very important philosophy for us as a company, which is we don't like to dabble, right? If we're going to do it, we're going to do it really well. Give you a recent example, our fashion show in the Hamptons. We wanted to provide a hospitality experience at the end of the show. And Ralph said, all right, we're going to recreate the New York Polo Bar restaurant in the Hamptons. So we built, for the evening, the New York Polo Bar in the middle of a field, right? That's all in.
Right.
And we've loved the impact. The consumer response has been tremendous. The brand equity response has been great. A lot of companies, and maybe, where I started, would have said, well, what's the ROI? Are you sure you're going to get the right level of return? Is this really reasonable? Isn't there a better way to use the funds? And there's a point where if you're dreaming and if you believe in something, you have to go all in.
Right.
And to some extent, we started with where Ralph started, which is in this building. That's also been his philosophy, which is, I believe in myself. I believe in what I stand for. There will be headwinds, but I'm going to stay the course.
Yeah.
And stay determined.
That's great. One of the things you've done is you've pushed towards international expansion. That also meant scaling back some of your U.S. operations.
Yes.
And I'm curious how you make a decision like that. Can you talk about both the expansion and the retraction?
Well, the focus was we have to bring the brand back to its luxury roots, right? And Ralph launched with a tie, 3 times the price of ties at the time, 2.5 times the price of a Christian Dior tie at the time. So Ralph launched as a luxury company. Over time, particularly in this market in the U.S., we lost sight of that, and because we were chasing growth, we over-distributed, We over-promoted. We ended up in the wrong channels with excessive presence in off-price and things like that. And it was pretty clear when I started with our team that if we're going to get back to our roots, where we show up says a lot about who we are. So we had to retrench here. And then, as I mentioned to you, I did see a lot of opportunities internationally that we had not taken advantage of. The retrenchment, actually, that's a P&G thing too. We did that when I worked with our team in the prestige fragrance business about 15 years ago, where we found our brands being over-distributed, a lot of gray market. And we said, you know what, we're going to take a hit. It's going to be painful financially, but if we want to build these brands to their full potential and ensure there's longevity, we have to clean it up. We did the same here, which is, okay, if we continue on this path, it's the road to the bottom, and we cannot promote our way to success, and nor are we going to expand our distribution broadly to success. So we need a hard pivot. Now, COVID to some extent helped, because there was a moment where things were almost like on pause, and we said, all right, let's use this time to reset. And we reset pretty hard. I think, as you know, we shut down about 2/3 of our department store doors. And I don't regret it. If anything, if you ask me what would you do differently, I'd say I might have gone even a bit deeper at that time. We took the hit. The numbers were ugly, but we weren't in this for one quarter or a year. We're in this for the next 10 and 20 years, and felt like we absolutely had to do this reset. And it is serving us super well. Not to get into the details of financials, but last quarter we got North America wholesale back to growth after many years of challenge, because we're now on a healthy foundation, and now we can build. Internationally, interestingly, Ralph has built something with the teams that resonates everywhere. I mean, I'm really amazed by that. You go to Sydney, you go to Tokyo, you go to Shanghai, you go to Seoul, you go to Paris, Milan, London. The core values that he represents, authenticity, timelessness, quality, family, that resonates everywhere. The concept of dreaming, right? And particularly during all these volatile times, people want to have the ability to dream. That's relevant everywhere. And therefore, we concluded we've got incredible white space. And honestly, Dan, I think we just got started, right? Because the bulk of our business is in 10 markets. There are more than 10 markets around the world. We approach the expansion opportunities through a city lens. So it's less about how are we going to win in China. It's more how are we going to win in Shanghai, Chengdu, Taipei, Hong Kong, and Macau, for example. But significant runway still ahead of us.
It's just, it's funny. You see businesses do this all the time. You go for growth and you've got to bring it back. Is that just the nature of business that you have to do? That the pendulum's always going, you're trying to find this middle ground? How do you think about that?
It's pretty clear in today's world, you need to run the business as a matrix. And matrices are complicated because there's often lack of clarity on who's accountable, right? Who's a decision maker, who's accountable. Particularly because in companies, we tend to play bumblebee soccer, i.e. everybody on the ball.
Okay.
Right? Which is the 3V model. Does the person have a veto? Does the person have a vote? Does the person have a voice? Okay. And using that filter to say, Dan, thank you for your input. You have none of these 3Vs. So that you have an O, that's an opinion. You can tell your grandma about it or your daughter, but not interested here. Thank you very much. Or no, Dan's the decision maker. He's got veto power. Everybody else line up to Dan's decision.
Yeah.
And I think it's really helpful because one of the greatest challenges in companies is just clarity on who makes the decision and can we please make a decision and go.